So anyway, I just, part of this model was an experiment. It was a little, I have to tell you, this was a little bit scary for me to do, at least a year ago before I started test driving it. It's like, who am I to come up with leadership development stuff? But, if not me, then who? At least I'll start the conversation. So part of my presenting this is, let me know what you think. This is changeable. This is mutable. We are the living tradition. So what I would love to hear, maybe a little bit today, but even, email me, is what works, what doesn't work. Because part of what we can do with the leadership development piece, this is the content stuff, which is important, but also within your congregations, how do you hold people accountable to doing this work? Let's see.
Yeah, how do you?
So one of the things that I've thrown out there along with this, you notice each one of these has a cute little round logo that goes with it. One thing that we're trying in our leadership school, ULTI, the UU Leadership Team Institute, which is the CERG leadership school, we're actually making little badges that go with each one of these competencies. And so they're going to get tote bags and they can pin the little badges on. So part of it's kind of a fun thing, but it's also this. We also have a worksheet booklet kind of thing where you can record what you've taken and keep track of your own growth and development. So part of it can be self-directed. As a leadership development team in a congregation, you could use this to kind of track the progress. Have maybe small groups where people hold each other. I don't want to say hold them accountable, but encourage each other to say, wow, all of us are a little light on contextual sensibility. Maybe we should do a workshop or something. Yes. You know what, if you could use the microphone, if that would be possible, yeah, because we are recording this, so. Go ahead and line up at the microphone. It's not a real workshop till that happens, right?
Well, I wanted to let you know, when I learned about this a few months ago, I got very excited about it, and actually developed a whole sort of leadership training plan for our church before I realized that I was creating sort of something for my ideal world instead of what they actually wanted. But when I presented it to my leadership development committee, they basically responded with, I don't think when we ask someone to be a leader that we can say, and please do this curriculum. So that was one thing. The other one was this. I'm going to go back to the back of the line.
And I guess that's part. I appreciate that, because part of my thinking about this is you don't have to do it all. I mean, you can just use it to help track yourself, as well as here's a way where you can track yourself rather than we aren't going to let you be on the board till you have 5 things in each one of these categories.
And you reminded me what the other thing was. Oh, okay. Amy Watson.
What congregation?
First UU Columbus.
Okay.
So part of the plan that I created was, what if, and maybe you've already started thinking about this, what if we had kind of an online self-assessment that somebody could take that would then feed back to them some suggestions based on how you did on this self-assessment? You might do this or that or something.
Excellent. Or maybe a phone app. Excellent. Yes. Both. Or all of them. Yes.
Hi, my name is Alex McGee. I'm from the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church in Unitarian Universalist in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I'm curious if you have any tips for selling points or motivational messages so that if our church members who are already so busy, already volunteering to bring meals and go to board meetings and teach religious education, how we could sell this as worth their time.
Okay, so again, part of my thinking of this is that as a leadership development team, if that's your role, you can use this as a framework. So as you're thinking about people and what you're offering for your in-house training, or if you see trainings in your district or region or whatever, you can use the framework for that to sort of see where the holes are. On an individual basis, part of the reason we're doing the webinars is just for the reason we know people are busy. So some of the boards I work with, all the board members say, okay, we each pledge to do one webinar a month. Or they might do all the same webinar and then talk about it, for the first 15 minutes of their board meeting. So part of what we're trying to do is, make it free, make it accessible, make it relevant. And please do fill out the feedback forms. Usually I have to double check, but we have like little feedback survey monkey things for each one to help us know what's good and what's not good. But is it helpful? A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's big, but it's meant to be so you can take it apart like Legos, kind of. Yes.
Hi, I'm Reverend Odette Fulbright. I'm serving the Unitarian Universalist Church of Cheyenne, Wyoming. And as we go into a leadership formation model from an old nominating committee kind of thing, I was just looking at this and thinking about how, I wondered how long these modules or these areas tend to take, because you could try to crush it into a year and do one a month, or you could say, let's do 4 this year and sort of spread it out. And then as I look at it, I was also thinking, if we have the goal not only of increasing the competencies of those people who are already in leadership, but inviting new people in, being multipliers, and that's what I do. That's what I love to do, is to keep inviting people in, And it seems like doing this, as you say, in something like a covenant group style, where it's highly relational, and shows how that works in the world as well as in the congregation, that would be a good model. But I wonder, are those resources already out there? Would we be creating them somewhat anew?
So we have a lot of content that you can use in the relationally. I amen to the relational part. The thing that I'm seeing, especially in the multicultural congregations, is the minister does one-on-ones with their top leaders, and those leaders do one-on-ones with the leaders they work with. So it's a very relational model. And part of those conversations are, so what are you doing? What are you finding that you need help with, or that you don't have the skills or capacities? What can we connect you with to help you do that? So in some ways, I think it's more of a using it sort of as an overlay, but not necessarily, this isn't driving the bus. The individual person's driving the bus. These are just roadmaps that they can use depending on what their situation is. Is that more helpful? Okay.
Frank Potter, Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Dubuque, Iowa. I want to start from the end, though, before in case I forget it. Like someone said before here, I don't think you need to make this something simple and difficult. We have a small congregation, about 45, and we have really qualified people. We have nurses, we have counselors, therapists. They're qualified, and they've done all this stuff. They know this stuff, so they have their strengths and weaknesses. So I think that there's a reason it would be worthwhile to designate people as lay leaders. They've been around, and that would be helpful to the title. You don't need to make it too complicated. So that's my other thing. The other thing is, we went through the commission lay leadership process, and I would caution you strongly I would actually say in most cases you want to avoid that. Okay? For the person, if you're considering commission lay leader, and she explained it's kind of a junior ministry, and it's also said it's not transferable. That's important. That means after you spend all that 3 years, and you just think about it, in your other job, you're not going to be happy, or they're not going to be happy with you, you have nothing. If you have that, you have your credential, it goes elsewhere. And it's just a natural process. So, the other thing, if we have a small fellowship, and what happened with us, I was on the board at that time, and the person bypassed the board because she wanted to get that commission. And she went with our year-end meeting and got approved. And it was sort of turned out to be very difficult for our fellowship for this person. So anyway, be cautious if you're considering doing it. It's so much work. And here's somebody that's successful, but she can tell you several people that were not successful and gave up because there's such a demanding program, and it doesn't transfer. So be really cautious here. And when you have a small fellowship, it can be devastating to have somebody come up where a lot of people like this person, and a lot of people think, wait a second here, I don't think she should be a leader. So be very cautious about it.
Yeah, thank you for that. We, I sort of alluded earlier that we had had some ups and downs in the Ohio Meadville district, and in all parts of our denomination, we've had some ups and downs around accountability and boundaries, and the boundaries are much different than they were even 10 years ago. We have a lot more. Part of this is about accountability, the covenant piece. So we're using the accountability piece more so now than maybe the experience was. And the idea is it's not a runaround. It's someone who the board has to be on board. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes, I'm Maggie Marshall from San Diego First UU. And my question is, I think there's great enthusiasm to learn many of the sensibilities that you have up there, multicultural, generational sensibilities. And people are wanting that training and are hungry for it. I find in some of the committee work that I'm involved in, the basic managerial skills. I struggle with people chairing a meeting and it not being participatory, or the basics of things that people all think that everybody that chairs a meeting should have. And I would love your answer on when some fundamental skills, for example, chairing meetings, somebody may have had those skills in the past or haven't refined them and updated them, or need loving reminders on how to follow an agenda, those kind of things. What would you suggest?
Depending if there's a lot of people in your congregation, you just bring somebody in for a Saturday morning, boot camp kind of thing with some of the basics. I mean, that's, you have, depending on what your situation is, if you have a lot of people, or maybe in your cluster, there might be enough people to do that, and just, have probably another lay leader could do that. You wouldn't necessarily need a district staff person to come in, but just some of those basics. You're right, though, those things are important, and I think there was a pendulum swing. For a while, that's all we taught, and we didn't, teach the more the sensibility stuff. So you're right; it's a both and. So I would say maybe get together with your cluster and find a good management person who can do that.
Hi, my name is Jeff Sylvester. I'm from First Universalist Church of Minneapolis. We're a fairly large congregation, and we're actually in the process of developing a formal leadership development plan. And our challenge is really with the recruitment and the assessment. And as I look at your model, I love the fact that maybe it'd be a way to adapt this for assessment. My other question is, I'm really curious about looking at youth and developing leadership among youth using this kind of lens. And I'm curious about what you've thought about that.
Youth isn't my portfolio, but I do sort of think about that. I do think about young adults, and another reason I wanted to have a model like this is we have, especially young adults who grew up UU and have all this leadership experience. They move, they go to another congregation, and they send them to the new UU class. and really, they're probably ready to jump into leadership. So part of the idea of the badging is recognizing skills that are already in people. The other thing with a formal program, I know what I was going to say. I have on the on-demand site, there's a class called Passing the Torch, and actually on the UUA website, on the main page, we're on leadership development. There's 5 I's: identify, invite, but sort of a framework for a leadership plan. And then the Passing the Torch class has a little bit more information on that. But what I've been doing, I've been collecting stories and programs from you all about what's going well. So for example, the church in Mount Vernon Church in the DC area, they have, I think, 2 or 3 times a year, they have sort of are you interested in leadership? Friday night dinner with wine and sort of some games and stuff, and then a Saturday morning. This is how the church works. And they just do this. There's no commitment or anything, so people come and they identify leaders doing that. So there's, Bill Klontz gave a presentation that we videotaped, and that's on our website. So there's an example of an identified event. And the assessment piece, there's actually someone who came up with a Survey Monkey kind of self-assessment. I'll see if I can get that adapted, because that would be really handy to have a tool. It's always nice to have a tool outside of the system that you can send people to. So let me see if we can make something like that happen. Yes?
Hi, I'm Leslie McPherson Artinian. I work at Harvard Divinity School, and I am on the worship committee at First Parish Milton, Mass. I actually just have a very basic question for Deb. As I was listening to you talk about your experience, which sounds frankly very exciting to me. But I have a really basic question, which is, do you also work a full-time job? And since it's unpaid, and how many hours do you put into your ministry?
Oh, good question. I have worked a full-time job while I've been a commissioned lay leader. I am not right now. How many hours do I put in? Probably about 10 to 12 a week, probably. I'm wearing different hats.
I mean, the financial piece is really obvious to
Right.
me.
And and I was struck by that. As I was hearing Renee speak about like the one in Columbus who does full time and is only comped for mileage or whatever. And I thought about that. I thought, wow, that's a privilege to have someone have life circumstances that enable them to do that on a volunteer basis. And it's certainly doesn't fit for all. Obviously, it's a luxury. It's a privilege.
Good question. That person is retired, by the way, so it's sort of a second career kind of thing. Yes?
I'm Reverend Tom Capo of People's Church Unitarian Universalist in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You started earlier talking about elders and deacons, and it seems to me that you're holding more of an elder role than a deacon role. Just again, that's that wise person in the congregation who has kind of a broad breadth of things that, like you said, sensibilities and skills and knowledge, while deacons are more the kind of the workers, the fiscal responsibility people, and they need a different set of skills. So if we went down this, if we use this model, you might be training to be an elder or training to be a deacon, and there would be different skill sets for each of those.
Yes, exactly.
Has that been thought about, or?
It's organic. So part of my way of operating is throwing ideas, little swirls of this and that. I see a swirl that's working over here, and I put it over there, and seeing what the creativity out of crowdsourcing kind of. So in some ways, because of our congregational polity, any congregation you decide we're going to have deacons and elders or lay hands or whatever you do to recognize someone in that way. How many of you do a installation of lay leaders in the fall, like RE teachers or pastoral care associates? I mean, that's a really easy way just to install someone in that position for the year, to hold them up. That this is someone we trust to care for our sick and our, so that's a little thing that we can do. But any congregation can, because of our polity, there's a lot of freedom there.
Hi, I'm Judy Wilson from Mainline Unitarian Church in Deacon, Pennsylvania. And some people touched on what I was concerned about, with not being paid. There's a lot of expectations for people not being paid. And I'm wondering if there's any sort of way of knowing how many people are missing because of that, that we haven't been able to recognize as leaders in our church. And I also was wondering, is there like a watered down version of this? Because there's a lot of leaders in our churches who don't go through this process, that they absolutely need the support, the education, the recognition. And I think, and I'm thinking of the youth leadership, I'm thinking of social action and stuff like this, that I can't quite fit in to this model, but these people need all these things, and a lot of them are practicing these things before, depending where what skills they have, where they come from. But I don't know if the paid leaders or whatever are getting the sense that we all need some sort of support, supervision, and recognition for what we're doing. And that's, I don't know if that's...
So I want to say, when I was just a lay leader, I put in 10, 12, 15 hours a week. I mean, to me, that's not... I wasn't recognized as a commissioned lay leader, but a lot of us put in a lot of time. So for me, that's... and the other thing is that the commissioned lay leader can only say no. The minister can't. There's a difference there too. It's a voluntary kind of position. There's compassion. So it's a way of helping them deepen and recognize. So to me, it's an opportunity to recognize the person. I'm realizing we're at time, so I'm happy to stay and answer questions, but I don't want to keep any of you longer than you want to stay. So I'll